The conference room on the 42nd floor looked out over the city, glass and steel stretching to the horizon. It was the kind of view people dreamed of. Victoria Hayes no longer noticed it. She sat at the long table, her back straight, her hands folded, forcing her breathing to stay steady. A dull pressure pulsed behind her eyes, slow and heavy, like a hand pressing from inside her skull. The numbers on the screen blurred for a second, then snapped back into focus. "Are you even paying attention?" The voice was sharp, public, cutting. Marcus Hayes stood at the head of the table, flawless in his tailored suit, one hand resting on the chair like he owned the room. Because he did. The executives around them shifted in silence. "This is the third time this week," Marcus continued, not lowering his voice. "We're in the middle of a critical discussion, and you look like you're somewhere else." Victoria swallowed. "I just need a moment." "A moment?" Marcus laughed. "Not kind. We're negotiating a deal worth tens of millions of dollars, and you need a moment." A few people gave nervous smiles. Most stared at the table. Heat crept up Victoria's neck. She pressed her fingers lightly against her temple, trying to ground herself. She had helped build this company from nothing. Late nights, cross-country flights, deals that fell apart, and deals that saved them. She had earned this seat. But lately, her body felt like it was betraying her. "I'm fine," she said quietly. Marcus raised his eyebrows. "Ladies and gentlemen, my wife is fine. Just tired. Maybe we should all stop working and take a nap." That did it. "I'm stepping out," Victoria said, pushing back her chair. "Of course you are," Marcus replied, already turning back to the screen. "We'll handle the real work." Victoria walked out on unsteady legs. The hallway seemed longer than usual, brighter. She made it into her office and closed the door, leaning against it as the world slowly stopped tilting. This wasn't the man she married. Her assistant knocked softly and stepped in. "Mrs. Hayes, your doctor's office called again. They want you to come in today. They said it's important." Victoria looked at the clock. "Call Marcus. Tell him I have an appointment at 4. "I already did," the assistant said carefully. "He said to stop wasting money on doctors." Victoria nodded. The words still hurt, even though she expected them. "I'm going anyway," she said. The doctor's office was quiet. Too quiet. Victoria sat with her hands clasped, watching the second hand on the clock crawl forward. When her name was called, her chest tightened. Dr. Morrison didn't waste time. "We found something," she said gently. Victoria felt the room shrink. "You have a tumor," the doctor continued, "in your brain." The words landed without sound. Victoria stared at her, waiting for correction, for laughter, for anything that would make this unreal. "It explains everything," the doctor said. "The headaches, the exhaustion, the confusion." "Is it serious?" Victoria whispered. "Yes," the doctor said honestly. "But it's treatable. We need to act quickly." Silence filled the room. All those months, Victoria thought. All the jokes, the doubts, the shame. "Do you want to call your husband?" the doctor asked. Victoria hesitated. "Yes," she said finally. When Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, he looked different. Still polished, still powerful. But something was cracked beneath it. The scans were placed on the screen. "This," the doctor said, pointing, "is what's been hurting your wife." Marcus stared, speechless. "For over a year," the doctor continued, "your wife has been sick. Every symptom was real." Marcus said nothing. Victoria watched his face, searching for something. Regret, fear, recognition. She felt strangely calm. The truth was finally visible. And nothing would ever be the same again. The room stayed silent after the doctor finished speaking. Marcus kept staring at the screen. The image of Victoria's brain glowed cold and unreal, a dark shape sitting where nothing should be. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally spoke. "How sure are you?" "Completely sure," Dr. Morrison said. "This isn't a guess. This is a cause." Victoria watched Marcus from the side. For the first time in months, he didn't look angry. He looked scared. "How long?" he asked. "At least a year," the doctor replied. Possibly longer. A year. Victoria felt the weight of that word. A year of being called tired, dramatic, weak. A year of pushing through pain because she was told it wasn't real. And surgery? Marcus asked. As soon as possible, Dr. Morrison said. I've already contacted a specialist, one of the best. He can see her tomorrow. Marcus nodded slowly, like a man processing bad numbers in a report. I need to speak with my wife alone, he said. Dr. Morrison looked at Victoria. She nodded. The doctor stepped outside and closed the door. The silence between them was thick. Marcus finally turned to her. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? Victoria's eyes hardened. I did. No, he said quickly. You mean you didn't listen, she said calmly. Because listening would have been inconvenient. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. I thought you were burning out. You thought I was a problem, Victoria said. Something to manage. Something slowing you down. That's not true. You mocked me in front of our team, she said. You told me to stop seeing doctors. You made me doubt myself. Marcus looked away. I didn't know, he said quietly. You didn't want to know. The door opened, and Dr. Morrison stepped back in. The surgeon can see you tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. Victoria stood. Her legs felt weak, but her voice didn't. I'll be there. The drive home was silent. Chicago moved past the windows, busy and indifferent. Marcus drove with both hands tight on the wheel. I'll clear my schedule, he said finally. I'll be there for everything. Victoria didn't answer. At home, she went straight to the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the city lights through the glass. Her phone buzzed. Her sister. I'm coming, Amanda said before Victoria could speak. I'll be on the first flight. Tears finally came then. Quiet. Heavy. That night, Victoria lay awake, listening to the distant sounds of the city. Somewhere in the apartment, Marcus was awake too. Tomorrow, they would meet the surgeon. Tomorrow, everything would move forward. And for the first time in a long time, Victoria knew one thing for certain. She was done being invisible. Morning light filled the surgeon's office, soft and calm, like it belonged to a different world. Books lined the walls. Framed photos showed smiling patients, shaking hands with the man who had saved them. Dr. Chin studied the scans in silence. Victoria sat perfectly still. Amanda was beside her, one hand wrapped firmly around hers. Marcus sat on the other side, quiet, almost small in the chair. This is a meningioma. Dr. Chin said at last. It's not cancer, but its size and position make it dangerous. Amanda exhaled sharply. It's pressing on areas that control focus, emotion, and coordination, he continued. That's why you felt like you're losing yourself. Victoria nodded slowly. Hearing out loud felt like someone finally translating her pain into a language the world respected. Can you remove it? She asked. Yes, Dr. Chin said, but it's not a simple procedure. The surgery will take 6 to 8 hours. Recovery will take months. Marcus leaned forward. I have an opening this Friday, the doctor replied. I don't recommend waiting. Friday, 3 days. Victoria's chest tightened, but she didn't look away. Do it. The next days blurred together. Tests, blood work, forms, instructions. Marcus canceled meetings. Entire days disappeared from his calendar. The company ran without him, something that hadn't happened in years. At home, Amanda watched everything. The way Marcus hovered. The way he didn't know where things were in his own kitchen. The way he tried to help and failed. You don't have to stay with him, Amanda said quietly one night while chopping vegetables. After the surgery, you can come with me. Boston. Fresh start. Victoria didn't answer right away. I built that company too, she said finally. I gave up pieces of myself for it. For him. Amanda stopped cutting. Then take your share. And leave. Marcus appeared in the doorway. He had heard enough. Can I talk to my wife? He asked. Amanda looked at Victoria. She nodded. Amanda walked away. Marcus stood there, unsure. Then he spoke. I was jealous, he said. Victoria turned slowly. Of me? Yes, he said. You were always better, smarter. People trusted you. And instead of being proud, I felt threatened. The words landed heavy. So I pushed you down, he continued, little by little, until I didn't even notice I was doing it. You humiliated me, Victoria said, while I was sick. I know, Marcus whispered, and I hate myself for it. Silence stretched between them. After the surgery, Victoria said, things change. Marcus nodded. Whatever you need. You sign papers tomorrow, she said. Equal control. Full authority. No excuses. Marcus swallowed, then nodded again. Done. That night, Victoria didn't sleep much. Before dawn, she dressed slowly. Marcus waited at the table, legal papers already signed. At the hospital, the halls smelled clean and cold. Nurses moved quickly, efficient, kind. I'm scared, Victoria whispered to Amanda. I know, Amanda said, holding her tight. Marcus stood nearby, eyes red. I'll be here when you wake up. The doors to the operating room opened. Bright lights, cold air. Count backward, the anesthesiologist said. Victoria did. And then everything went dark. Time disappeared. For Victoria, there was no pain, no fear, no sound. Just nothing. For Marcus and Amanda, time stretched until it hurt. They sat in the waiting room under harsh white lights. Other families whispered. Some cried. Some stared at walls like they were afraid to blink. Every 40 minutes, a nurse appeared. The surgery is going well. No complications. Dr. Chin is pleased. Marcus nodded each time, but his hands shook. He hadn't felt this powerless in his entire life. There were no deals to negotiate, no leverage, no control. Amanda watched him closely. You don't get points for sitting here, she said quietly after hours of silence. What you did to her doesn't disappear because you're scared now. I know, Marcus replied. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, Amanda said, because she almost died believing she was weak. Marcus closed his eyes. I broke her, he said, and I didn't even notice. Near the 8th hour, the doors finally opened. Dr. Chin stepped out, exhaustion visible even through calm professionalism. The tumor is out, he said, completely removed. Marcus felt his knees weaken. No damage to surrounding tissue, the doctor continued. She did very well. Amanda covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. When can we see her? Marcus asked. In about 30 minutes, Dr. Chin said. She's waking up. When they entered recovery, Victoria looked small beneath the blankets. Her head was wrapped in white bandages. Machines hummed softly around her. Her eyes fluttered open. She smiled faintly. Hi. Amanda laughed through tears and took her hand. You scared me. Tired, Victoria whispered. Sleep? Amanda said. We're here. Marcus stood at the foot of the bed, afraid to move closer, afraid to touch, afraid he'd break something else. I'm here, he said softly, just like I promised. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Then she closed her eyes. The next days were slow and painful. Headaches, nausea, confusion. But each day, something improved. On day 3, she walked on her own. On day 5, she laughed. On day 7, Dr. Chin smiled. You're ready to go home. Home felt different. Marcus moved into the guest room without being asked. He cooked badly, cleaned quietly, listened more than he spoke. 6 weeks later, Victoria sat in a therapist's office. I almost died, she said calmly, and I'm not going back to being small. Marcus nodded. I'm here to learn, or I'll step aside. 3 months later, her hair covered the scar. 6 months later, Victoria stood at the head of the conference table. CO, the same room where she'd been mocked. This time, no one laughed. She stepped onto the balcony and looked at the city. She was alive. She was clear. And whatever came next, she would choose it herself. The building felt different now. The same glass walls. The same long hallways. The same city humming below. But when Victoria walked into Hayes Enterprises again, people stood straighter. Not out of fear, out of respect. She moved slowly, still careful with her energy, but her mind was sharp, clear in a way it hadn't been for years. The fog was gone. The constant pressure behind her eyes was gone. What remained was something stronger. Awareness. The boardroom filled quietly. Executives who once avoided her eyes now waited for her to speak. Victoria took her seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin," she said. The meeting flowed differently. Decisions were cleaner. Conversations shorter. People listened. When someone interrupted her, she raised a hand once and the room went silent. Marcus sat 2 seats down. Not leading, observing. For the first time, he saw it clearly. She had always been the engine. After the meeting, an older board member approached her privately. "The company feels steadier," he said. "You bring balance." Victoria nodded. That balance was always here. At home, things were quieter. Careful. Marcus didn't assume. He asked, "How are you feeling? Do you want space? Can I help?" Sometimes she said yes. Sometimes no. He accepted both. They started counseling again. Not rushed. Not polite. Honest. "You didn't just ignore my pain," Victoria said in one session. "You rewrote it. You made me believe I was a problem." Marcus stared at the floor. "I don't know how to undo that." "You don't," she replied. "You live with it. And you change." Outside the office, life shifted too. Victoria took walks by the lake, ate slowly, slept without alarms. She learned the difference between rest and escape. One evening, Marcus spoke quietly over dinner. "I want you to be CEO permanently," he said. "Not symbolic. Fully." Victoria studied him. "And you?" "I'll step back," he said. "From the spotlight. From control." "Why?" "Because I finally see that winning isn't the same as leading." She didn't answer right away. Weeks passed. Papers were signed. Announcements made. The headlines changed. Hayes Enterprises appoints Victoria Hayes as CEO. Marcus moved into a smaller place downtown, not as punishment, as space. They met once a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes for therapy, sometimes just coffee. They were learning each other again. One night, Victoria stood alone on her balcony, the city lights stretching endlessly. She touched the faint scar on her head. It had taken a tumor to remove the lies. It had taken pain to return her voice. And now, standing in the quiet, she knew something she had never allowed herself to know before. She did not need to be chosen. She had already chosen herself. Autumn came quietly. The city cooled. The air sharpened. Leaves collected along the sidewalks like forgotten letters. Victoria noticed things again. Small things. Ordinary things. Things she had rushed past for years. Her mornings were slower now. No emergency meetings. No rushing calls before sunrise. She woke naturally, drank her coffee by the window, and watched the city wake up instead of racing it. At work, the company changed shape. Victoria cut meetings in half, promoted people who listened instead of shouted, ended projects that existed only to feed egos. Profits didn't fall. They rose. Employees started staying late again, not because they were afraid, because they cared. One afternoon, Jennifer stood in Victoria's doorway, smiling. "People say it feels human again." Victoria nodded. It always could have been. Marcus watched all of this from a distance. He attended therapy twice a week, sat in uncomfortable silence, faced truths he had avoided for decades. "I built my worth on being needed," he admitted once. "And when she didn't need me, I punished her." The therapist didn't soften it. "That's not love." "I know," Marcus said. Some evenings, Marcus and Victoria walked by the lake together. Not touching, not pretending, just walking. "I don't expect us to go back," Marcus said one night. "We can't," Victoria replied. "That version of us is gone." "Then what are we doing?" he asked. "Seeing what remains," she said. At home, Victoria packed away old things. Awards, photos, the version of her life that felt like someone else's ambition. She donated half her dresses, kept the ones that felt like her. Amanda visited often, watched closely, said little. "You're different," Amanda said finally. "I feel like myself again," Victoria replied. "And Marcus?" Victoria paused. "He's trying." "That's not an answer." "No," Victoria said softly. "It's not." One evening, Victoria found Marcus waiting at the cafe they always met at. He looked nervous, younger somehow. "I've decided something," he said. She waited. "I'm stepping away from the company completely," he continued. "Selling my shares, starting a foundation, education, health access." Victoria studied him. "Why tell me?" "Because I need you to know this isn't a strategy," he said. "It's accountability." Silence passed between them. "That's your choice," Victoria said. "I know," Marcus replied. "I'm not asking you to stay." That night, Victoria lay awake again. Not from pain, from clarity. She had survived. She had rebuilt. Now came the hardest part, choosing what kind of life she wanted next. Winter arrived early. The city turned gray. Wind cut between buildings. The lake hardened into steel. Victoria wrapped her coat tighter as she walked alone, her breath visible in the cold. She liked the silence. It gave her space to think. Marcus's decision echoed in her mind, leaving the company, selling his shares, walking away from the identity that had defined him. For years, she had begged him to see her. Now he was finally seeing himself. At work, the transition was smooth. Marcus's departure was framed as a personal pivot. The board supported it. The company didn't wobble. That told Victoria everything. One evening, Marcus asked to meet, not at the cafe, somewhere neutral. They sat across from each other in a quiet restaurant. No rush, no tension, just honesty. "I don't want you to forgive me," Marcus said. "I want you to be free." Victoria studied him. He wasn't trying to persuade, or impress, or control the outcome. "That's new," she said. "I know," he replied, "and it might be too late." "Maybe," Victoria said, "but it matters that you understand why." He nodded. They talked for hours. About Harvard, about the early days, about when things started breaking, about how ambition turned into fear. "I loved you," Marcus said. "I just didn't know how to love without ownership." Victoria felt the truth of it settle. "I loved you too," she said, "but I lost myself trying to keep us working." When they stood to leave, Marcus didn't reach for her hand. "I'll always show up if you need me," he said, "even if that means disappearing." Victoria walked home alone. Snow began to fall. Weeks passed. Victoria accepted a speaking invitation. A small event, women in leadership. She stood on stage, looking at faces full of possibility. "I didn't lose my voice," she said. "I was taught to doubt it." The room was silent. After the talk, messages flooded in. Women, men, stories of being unseen, unbelieved, pushed aside. Victoria felt something shift. This wasn't just her story anymore. Amanda called that night. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" Victoria asked. "For choosing yourself," Amanda said, "even when it's lonely." Victoria looked out at the snow-covered city. It was lonely sometimes, but it was honest, and that was new. She knew the ending wasn't decided yet, but she also knew this. She would never disappear again. Spring came slowly. The snow melted into the streets. The lake softened. The city breathed again. Victoria felt in herself, too, a quiet loosening she hadn't realized she was holding on to. Her calendar filled, but differently now. Speaking events, strategy sessions, mentorship meetings, work that felt aligned instead of draining. One afternoon, she visited the hospital, not as a patient, as a donor. She stood in the same hallway where her life had almost stopped and spoke with administrators about expanding neurological care access. Quiet funding, no press, no speeches. "This saved my life," she said simply. "It shouldn't depend on luck." They agreed. Marcus kept his distance, just as he promised. No hovering, No pressure. But sometimes she felt his presence in small ways. A book left at her door. A message before a big talk. Proud of you. No expectations attached. One evening, they met for coffee again. Not scheduled. Not heavy. You look lighter, Marcus said. I am, Victoria replied. They sat in comfortable silence. I've started the foundation, Marcus said. First grants went out this week. Victoria nodded. Good. I'm learning who I am without proving anything, he added. That's hard work, she said. Yes, he smiled. Harder than building an empire. They stood to leave. I don't know what we are, Marcus said honestly. Victoria met his eyes. Neither do I. And that's okay? For now, she said. That night, Victoria returned home and stood in front of the mirror. The scar was barely visible now. A thin line, a reminder. She touched it gently. It had taken everything breaking to make her whole. She poured a glass of water, stood by the window, and watched the city lights flicker on one by one. Her phone buzzed. Amanda. So, her sister asked. Victoria smiled. I'm happy. There was a pause. Then Amanda laughed softly. That's all I needed to hear. Victoria ended the call and stood there a while longer. No fear, no noise, just a woman who had survived, chosen herself, and stepped into a future she finally trusted. Whatever came next would be built on truth. And this time, that would be enough. Summer returned with heat and noise and life spilling into the streets. Victoria walked through the city without rushing. Sunglasses on, hair lifted by the warm wind. No one stopped her now to ask for permission, approval, or reassurance. They asked for direction. At Hayes Enterprises, the culture shift was complete. People spoke freely. Junior voices were heard. Decisions were debated, not dictated. Victoria led from the center, not the top. One afternoon, an executive hesitated during a meeting. This might be a bad idea, he said carefully. Victoria smiled. Then let's find out together. The room relaxed. That night, Victoria hosted a small dinner. No investors, no press, just a few close colleagues, and Amanda. Laughter filled the apartment in a way it never had before. Later, as plates were cleared, Amanda leaned close. You look like someone who owns her life. I do, Victoria said. Finally, Marcus didn't attend. By design, but a message arrived later. Hope tonight was good. Proud of what you're building. Victoria read it once, then put the phone down. She didn't need to respond. Weeks later, Victoria received an invitation. A national leadership summit. Closing keynote. She almost declined. Then she remembered the woman she used to be. Silent, doubting, shrinking. She accepted. On stage, under bright lights, she didn't tell a dramatic story. She told the truth. I was successful and invisible at the same time, she said. I was praised for endurance when I should have been protected. The audience leaned in. We don't need to be tougher, she continued. We need to be heard sooner. Applause rose. Not explosive. Sustained. Afterward, Marcus watched the recording alone. He didn't feel pride. He felt humility. That night, he wrote a letter. Not an email. A real letter. He didn't send it. Some things were no longer his to ask for. Victoria returned home late, exhausted in the best way. She stood on her balcony, city humming below. She thought about how close she had come to losing everything. She thought about how much she had gained by letting go. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a test. It felt like space. And she stepped into it, without looking back. The first anniversary came quietly. No headlines, no speeches. Just a date on the calendar that Victoria noticed while pouring her morning coffee. 1 year since the surgery. She took the day off. No meetings, no calls, no responsibilities except one. To sit with the truth of what she had survived. She walked by the lake alone. The water shimmered under the sun. Runners passed. Families laughed. Life moved forward without asking permission. She sat on a bench and closed her eyes. A year ago, she had been afraid she would disappear. Now she felt solid. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Marcus. I know today matters. No reply needed. I hope you're proud of yourself. Victoria read it, then placed the phone face down. She didn't feel anger, or longing, or regret. She felt peace. That afternoon, she met Amanda for lunch. You okay? Her sister asked. I'm better than okay, Victoria said. I'm steady. Amanda smiled. That's all I ever wanted for you. As the sun dipped lower, Victoria returned home and opened a drawer she hadn't touched in months. Inside were old documents, early business plans, handwritten notes, proof of who she had always been. She didn't throw them away. She smiled and closed the drawer. That evening, Victoria stood in her living room, city lights rising outside the windows. She raised a glass of water, not in celebration, but acknowledgement, to survival, to clarity, to choosing herself. Somewhere across the city, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, the unsent letter folded on his desk. He didn't reach for it. He had learned something important. Love wasn't possession. It was respect. Victoria turned off the lights and went to bed, unafraid of sleep, unafraid of silence. The woman who once doubted her own pain was gone. In her place stood someone unbreakable, and her story wasn't ending. It was finally hers. Fall returned again, softer this time. The city glowed in gold and rust. Victoria noticed how seasons felt different now, not like deadlines, like chapters. She stood in her office late one evening, the building nearly empty. The lights of Chicago blinked below, familiar but no longer overwhelming. Jennifer knocked lightly. Board approved expansion. Unanimous. Victoria smiled. Good work. After Jennifer left, Victoria stayed standing, hands resting on the glass. A year ago, she had been fighting to be believed. Now, people trusted her without question, not because of her title, because of her presence. Her phone buzzed, a number she hadn't saved. Unknown. She hesitated, then answered. Victoria, Marcus's voice said, careful. I wouldn't call if it wasn't important. She waited. I'm moving, he continued, out of the city, west, near the mountains. A pause. I wanted you to hear it from me. Victoria absorbed the words. She felt something loosen, not tighten. Thank you for telling me, she said. I'm not running, Marcus added quickly. I'm choosing something quieter, something honest. I know, Victoria replied. Silence settled between them, calm and complete. I hope you're happy, Marcus said. I am, she answered. I hope you will be too. They hung up without promises. That night, Victoria packed a small box from her office. Not essentials, memories, a photo from the early days, a notebook filled with ideas written in her handwriting. She didn't need to carry everything forward, only what still fit. Weeks later, she stood on a different stage. Smaller, no cameras, a room full of young women just starting out. You don't have to earn the right to exist, Victoria told them. If something feels wrong, listen. Your body knows before your mind does. They listened. Walking home afterward, Victoria felt tired, but it was a clean kind of tired, the kind that comes from alignment. She unlocked her apartment and stepped inside, alone but not lonely. For the first time in her life, the silence felt like companionship, and that's how she knew. She had already arrived. The city woke slowly that morning, not rushing, not demanding. Victoria stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching light move across the buildings. There was no meeting on her calendar, no call waiting, no one expecting her to perform. She breathed in, a full breath. Downstairs, life continued. Cars moved. People hurried. Somewhere, someone was late to something important. It all felt distant now, like a life she once lived. Victoria dressed simply and left the apartment. She walked without direction, letting her feet decide. Past the lake, past familiar streets, past places filled with memories that no longer hurt. At a small park, she sat on a bench and watched children play. Their laughter was careless, loud, real. She smiled. Once, she had been told to endure, to be strong, to push through. Now she understood something different. Strength was listening. Strength was stopping. Strength was walking away when staying meant disappearing. Her phone buzzed. A message from the hospital administrator. The new wing is approved. Construction starts next month. Victoria closed her eyes. Good. That afternoon, she returned home and opened her laptop. Not to work. To write. Not a book. Not a speech. A letter. To herself. She wrote about the woman who doubted her pain. The woman who stayed quiet to keep peace. The woman who survived something she should never have had to endure alone. She thanked her. Then she closed the laptop. As evening fell, Victoria stood on her balcony one last time. The city lights came on one by one, like a consolation she finally understood. She didn't need closure. She didn't need forgiveness. She didn't need to be chosen. She had her life. Whole, honest, her own. Victoria Hayes turned away from the window, turned off the lights, and stepped forward into whatever came next. Not afraid, not invisible, free.